Hi, have you heard of strategy maps? I guess that if you're still listening, it means that you want to learn about strategy maps or you want to learn more about strategy maps, but I guess you're curious enough to keep watching this video. So as you know, on the next strategy forum, we're going to talk about how can you leverage the strategy execution tools, and in particular the strategy map, to better describe and execute your sustainability strategy. But obviously, before understanding how can you leverage these tools and how can you tweak them to actually describe better sustainability strategies, it would be good to understand how does the traditional strategy map works and how does it actually help in the challenge of strategy execution. So I've prepared here an example of slides that's, is the old strategy map of a client of mine. And basically what you need to understand from a traditional strategy map is that is the summary of the whole strategy in one single page. And when I say summary, I mean all of the strategic objectives in one single page. So it's not the projects you're trying to do, it's what do you need to achieve with your strategy. And the building blocks, as I say, of this strategy map are strategic objectives, and they're not random in the page. They are grouped by this horizontal grouping that we call perspectives, and there is a cost and effect relationship in between the different perspectives. So everything about this red dotted line in the middle of the strategy map are strategic outcomes, objectives that at the end of the day, they have value by themselves. And that's what we ultimately are trying to achieve with our strategy. So traditionally, strategy maps had at the top financial or key financial outcomes, because at the end of the day, it was to describe the business strategy, right? So normally you have financial outcomes at the top, and then you have what is the client's perception that you want your clients to have of your value proposition. And obviously there is a cost and effect relationship, because if the clients perceive you in a specific way, that should drive more sales or revenue, which is normally a key financial outcome. Also, perceptions related with the cost part of your value proposition will also have an impact on the cost financial outcomes, right? So the important thing is that those are the strategic outcomes of your strategy, but the key of execution is always below this red dotted line, which is basically the strategic objectives that are input for the strategy. So obviously, strategy is always a hypothesis, right? But you're assuming that achieving all of these objectives, all of these white building blocks below the red dotted line, and if the hypothesis of your strategy is correct, that should help you to achieve all of the strategic outcomes at the top, right? So the strategic inputs are normally, structured in two perspectives. This one here, which is called normally internal or internal processes, now probably more commonly known as internal levers or strategic levers, are actually the key of the execution, are those objectives that you need to be achieving with the implementation of your strategic initiatives or strategic projects. And if you achieve them, they should generate those desired outcomes, above the red dotted line. And at the bottom, last but not least, you'll find all of the objectives related with your enablers, your strategic enablers. The idea of enablers is you can try to pull or push these levers as much as you want, but if the enablers are not achieved first, then you won't be able to generate the desired outcomes, right? So I pick up this example as an old strategy map, actually, of a good client of mine. And I like it, and I use it actually at class because it's very simple. It's basically a sugar company, which is, if not the biggest, one of the biggest, sugar companies in the region, is the biggest private company in Eswatini. And basically, this is the strategy map that we built when they had a low-cost strategy. This company used to have a protected quota in the European Union, where price of sugar were basically double the international prices. Unfortunately for them, this protection in the European Union disappeared, so therefore they were not going to be selling the sugar at the same price. and therefore, reducing the unit cost was absolutely essential for survival. So you can see that the key financial outcome here was efficiency increase, which was the metric was actually a unit cost. And this was achieved by increasing volume of sugar more than the increase in cost. You need to understand that sugar business basically is a fixed cost business. 70% of the costs are fixed. And even though it sounds counterintuitive, if you want to significantly reduce your unit cost, you actually need to produce more. So clients' perception here was not particularly relevant because this is a commodity business, even though this was their strategic objectives in terms of perception of their clients. But the key of execution was here. First is the expansion. And expansion meant they wanted to have more land under cane, so growing more cane, and also have a bigger factory that could process more cane per hour, right? So obviously, if they achieve that, their volume increase should be higher than the increase in cost. That should drive the unit cost decrease, and therefore, get better profits and be sustainable with the new price in the market. So obviously, you can see the cost and effect of a strategy map. How does it work? You can even imagine that each of these strategic objectives will have their own KPIs with their own strategic initiatives, right? So here, an engineering plan to expand the factory, it's the project, and the KPI is the tons of cane that this factory can process per hour, right? Then here you also have as a strategic levers, the operational excellence, and basically the key levers were the main levers of their internal value chain. So this is related with their efficiency growing cane. This is related with their efficiency moving cane, which in this business is a big part of the cost. And finally is the efficiency of the sugar factory and a byproduct, which is ethanol, right? So you can see how the strategy maps help in the execution. So if you're measuring, the efficiency in growing cane, the amount of tons per hectare is the key KPI for this objective. And the initiative, for example, in this case, I remember it was increasing drip irrigation. Drip irrigation actually is more expensive, but it grows cane that is much thicker with much more sucrose, with much more sugar. And therefore, you can see again, the volume increase in sugar was bigger than the increase in the cost, therefore was decreasing unit cost, therefore was making the company financially sustainable, right? So you can see how strategy maps, traditional strategy maps, help you to achieve your key financial outcomes. And therefore, finally, here at the bottom, you have the enablers. You can also see the cost and effect relationship here, because as you may imagine, this factory expansion and the land expansion was very intensive in terms of CapEx. So increasing funding was a very important strategic enabler. We were talking about in the order of magnitude of 1.5 billion rands. So obviously you can see the cost and effect, right? So if you are not able to increase the funding, you won't be able to fund this expansion. And even if you have the best engineering designing the factory expansion, but you don't achieve this increase of funding, this is not going to happen. This volume increase is not going to happen. This decrease in unit costs is not going to be enough to be sustainable to survive with the new prices that they were going to be selling the sugar with. So you can see how a traditional strategy map works. How can it help, describe, measure, and action a strategy? But the key question is, how can we tweak strategy maps to use it for the execution and implementation of the strategy, of the strategies and sustainability strategy in particular? So if you want to learn more about how to leverage all the strategy execution tools, and in particular, how to tweak strategy maps to use it for a successful, sustainable strategy implementation, please join us in the Strategy Forum, the 5th of November at the auditorium on Gibbs campus at 5:45. Please don't forget to register since the spaces and the seats are limited. See you there, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you.